Stay on.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Cut. I'm your host, Christian Williams, and I am here, as always, with Randy Hall. Randy, how are you, man?
Doing good. Nice off day today for Good Friday, unlike some people. So yeah, definitely enjoying the day off with some good weather here, which seems to be a change for Milwaukee.
Very nice, very nice. I did not have the day off, and I work tomorrow, so we're going to make tonight quick because we have a nice, fun ribbon cutting for our new turf field. So, yeah, but tonight we're here to talk about the Seattle Seahawks. We were supposed to do this episode a long time ago. Thank you guys for being with us, sticking with us. It's been a crazy couple of weeks for the both of us, but we are back. We are talking Seattle Seahawks because they have one of the most fun draft, the most options in this draft. They can do a whole lot of things. And honestly, they're in positions to make some luxury picks here, which is a lot of fun. Teams that can do that are a lot of fun. If this is your first Friday fix, first we talk a little bit about the state of the team, their current cap situations, do a little bit of a free agency recap, and then, clean it all up. And then we're going to be doing a 7-round mock draft for the Seattle Seahawks. So let's get right into it. State of the team. The Seahawks were one of the surprise teams last year. They ended up outkicking their coverage is how we could say it. But very, very close. They didn't sneak into the playoffs. No, because that would have been the most exciting thing is if they got into the playoffs, them and the Lions. But they didn't. Randy hated them before the season, and so that's why I have to pause on this for a second.
To be fair, we were very different in our predictions. But that was simply just quarterback play. I mean, Geno Smith definitely outkicked his coverage last year for what he did for his career. It seemed like he started to turn it on near the end of his tenure of his Jets career before he got his jaw broken, and then it kind of went downhill for about 7 years, it felt like. So he's just kind of was a lot better last year. Played smart and effective football. I think there's good coaching and good schemes there as well. But that was really the difference. And I believe I had him at 1 win and you had him at 10. And neither of us were really right, but you were closest by far.
No. I had him at 7 or 8. And so I was.
You have always said this, and I've always been right. And you've always been right.
All right.
It was 9 or 10. But regardless of that, either way, they played much better than I thought they would. And literally, it was just quarterback play. I think every other part of this team, I think, played up to what we thought they would, except I would say the cornerback room. I think they played well above what we thought they would, and that was highlighted by Tyreek Woolen.
Yeah, Woolen definitely had a surprising year for me. The film at UTSA wasn't my favorite. I thought that there was a lot of rawness to his game, but this is, that's one of the prime examples for bet on the traits and things will come to fruition. I had him at 8 and 9 officially on our record predictions. So I don't know what they finished last year. Honestly, I don't have that pulled up. I should have written that.
Right. I would say
it was close. But I think it's important to note too that a lot of their success was on the back of their offense. They had a 90.0 PFF run grade, which was 7th in the league. A lot of that was Rashad Penny early. When he went down, Ken Walker took over and kind of filled that role quite nicely. I think they've got a really nice piece in Ken Walker. On the other side of things, though, they struggled to tackle people. 45.0 was their PFF tackling grade, 27th overall in the league, and you could see that on the film. There was some inconsistencies with their defensive play last year. before we get into the free agency and everything that happened, Geno Smith did receive a contract extension this year, this offseason. Down the stretch, Geno started to look a little more like pumpkin Geno. He made a lot more errors down the stretch. Do you think so? They got him, I believe, on 20 something million per year. I don't have it right in front of me.
There's like
25.
an average. So he was 3 years, 75 million. So that's an average
Yeah.
of 25. But I believe this year it's like 50 million. So they're
Okay.
getting majority of the cash and the guarantees out of the way this year.
Yeah.
I think that speaks to Geno Smith entirely. Like he's never going to be their franchise quarterback, and
Yeah.
this is the type of quarterback. This is always going to be. There's going to be a ton of guys like this, and that's why everyone is still at least looking at the possibility of them taking a quarterback at 5 and or at 20, simply because, or even 37, I guess, with like Hendon Hooker. But it's because of he's never going to take you over the top, but he can get you close. And we've said the same thing about many quarterbacks over the last few years. The one that always comes to mind for everyone is Jimmy G. I think they're in the same tier, and they could win football games by playing in the system. Playing
Yeah.
football.
Yeah. 8 of Geno's interceptions came from week 12 on. They did sneak into the wild card. I don't know why I thought they missed out. It was the Lions that missed out, and they
Yeah.
played the 49ers in the first round. But 8 of the 12 interceptions that he threw came from week 12 on. So that's kind of where that comes from. I think you're right. I think that they are one of those sleeper teams to go quarterback here, depending on how the board falls. I also think that they could kick the can down the road a little bit. Maybe take some of these assets, trade back, acquire more in future years, and then go get aggressive for a guy at a later date. But we just talked about Geno's contract, but let's get into the current cap situation and free agency and things like that. So take it away, Randy.
Yeah, they are just under 9 million currently of the top 51 projected. That is, so that's including the draft picks. So that's 8.9 million exactly. But they still have a few key free agents, including some they've cut recently, like Shelby Harris. But Gabe Jackson, Poona Ford, and Al Woods were all starters as well. And then there's other rotational guys out there that I think could be good parts. One that it seems like they're always talking about is, oh my God, why did I just blank on their running back? Their only pass catcher. Travis.
Travis Homer that they
Homer,
lost to.
thank you.
Yeah. Sorry.
You'll see the draft will tell you why I was blanking on that later.
Mm-hmm.
But there has been a lot of talk of possibly him returning to this team as well as other key rotational pieces. But with 9 million, there's no real splashes you can really make unless you're getting someone at a cheap contract and they're taking a discount to come to your team. So at this point, I do think they fill out with 4 or 5 more signings. I don't think they're looking to roll over a ton of capital next year. I don't think there's going to be an issue for them going into next year.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. In terms of their free agent addition, so we'll quickly go through this before we add ours. So Geno Smith, 3 years, 75 million. They brought Drew Lock back on a 1-year, $4 million deal. So a lot of money tied up in that quarterback room this year, which is probably your argument for why you don't take a quarterback. But also, like you said, the Geno Smith deal is front loaded, so it might not be that bad. Evan Brown, 1 year, 2.25. Draymond Jones was their big signing, 3 years, 51 million. They brought in Devin Bush, 1 year, 3.5 million. They brought in Jaron Reed, 2 years, max of 10.8 million. Julian Love, about 6 million per year. And then they also recently added Bobby Wagner back to the team, which very significant in terms of just leading the defense, whether or not, I mean, he was good last year, but if he starts to fall off a little bit, I think that's okay because you still have that veteran presence and a guy that won a championship with you in that locker room. Randy, where'd you go? Did you add anything else?
I did, and it was all cheap pieces. I brought back Tanner Muse, 1 year, 850, so close to the min. He had some snaps that were decent last year. This seems to be one of those teams that they have guys that are on kind of like the edge of the roster that keep rotating and making plays and they stick around for a while. So that would be why I bring him back. They need safety depth, especially with your top safety and Jamal Adams never really being healthy. You definitely need to keep depth in that room. Um, I brought in Armon Watts on a $1.5 million per year for 2 years to replace Al Woods and Poona Ford, kinda. And Shelby Harris,
Yeah.
like there really isn't a good replacement out there. They do need nose tackle help, but this will give them rotational help at the 3 tech. And if they can't figure out nose tackle fully, it's going to be at least give them more options to just play a little bit more of a 4-3 style front in the meantime while their nose tackle gets healthy. Rasheem Green started bringing him up again, 1 year, $3.5 million. They need edge rush help and depth, especially at the 5 tech and a pure speed edge rusher as well. I do think Boye Mafe takes a huge step this year, but let's keep getting swings at the board because their pass rush and D line in total was terrible last year.
Hey, really quick.
Mm-hmm.
I know we did this right before this week. Rasheem Green actually just signed with the Bears. So do you have
Thank you.
another edge rusher in mind?
No, but I also went that position in the draft,
Right.
so we're
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, that was more a depth piece anyway. But
Yes.
that just happened, I
Oh
think,
god.
yesterday. Um,
Yeah,
but
I haven't been
low
looking.
key, one of the more underrated free agents that was out there for that long too. So,
Yeah,
um,
100%. I've brought him up multiple times on these shows simply because while he's not putting up domineering stats at an S position, he is giving you quality rotational snaps at the edge rush position as a 5 tech and a stand up outside rusher. It's a good positional acquisition by the Bears, but it would have really helped the Seahawks front a bit while they tried to figure it out and give him some versatility in the draft picking. But I also brought in Chosen Anderson. Don't know why I chose that name, but 1 year, 1 million. I just get another speedster on this team, really help out and allow a little bit more versatility in who you could draft as a wide receiver in this class. I do think they need some speed elements brought into this team to complement DK Metcalf on the outside. And if you don't bring in someone like Chosen here, you're really fighting to maybe you're taking Zay Flowers, and I'm not in love with the fit necessarily.
yeah.
So this gives me some more flexibility.
Yeah, I like that. I was a lot less active than you in terms of adding pieces, just because I think most of the pieces that they add are going to be, you know, camp bodies for the most part at this point.
Ancillary, yeah.
Yeah, but I did, just in case they aren't able to get one of these running backs, Jerick McKinnon's still sitting out there, and they did lose Travis Homer also to the Bears, by the way. I forgot that signing happened because who really cares that much about Travis Homer? He's not that good. But they do need a better pass catching running back. Jerick McKinnon is exactly that. Um, you questioned like, do you think Jerick would want to go there? I do. I think the Seahawks are set up pretty nicely to win that division. Especially the 49ers are currently the favorites, I believe, and no one actually knows who their quarterback's going to be. So I think the Seahawks have a chance to go pretty deep in the NFC playoffs. So I think McKinnon would take that and have a pretty prominent role here as well. And it's cheap, and that's really the only impact signing I made.
It's cheap, but probably a little bit of a pay bump than what the Chiefs are going to be able to offer.
Yep.
Um, this is a plentiful running back class, and with a team like the Chiefs that are still trying to flesh out different holes of the roster, getting a pass catching back day 2, day 3 is more effective, probably for their future, than bringing back Jerick McKinnon and hoping the magic is still there.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right. Let's get into the draft then. So in terms of team needs, so we talked about how they signed Evan Brown. Center is still a very big need for them. Obviously, they're not going to go center with their first pick. They might go center with their second pick. They definitely need defensive tackle help still. I know they added to that room, but they still need depth because they were pretty rough in that department. They did add a couple of linebackers we talked about, but I think that's going to be one that they want to add some depth as well. They need interior offensive line. We've talked about wide receiver a couple times. I think that that's a pretty prominent need. Tyler Lockett is going to be 31 this year. And then you're going to need another running mate for DK Metcalf. So I think that's up there. And then, corner, just continuing to fill out that room. Tariq Woolen and Kobe Bryant were good for you last year, but Kobe Bryant's probably best in the slot, rotating maybe with Julian Love. So I think you want another outside corner, especially, and then just edge rusher, safety, running back, your typical things. Notice I didn't say quarterback. I think that that's still a need. I just don't think they address it this year personally.
Yeah, whoever they have at 1 on their board would have to be there at 5. I think that's the only chance, really. Or whoever, if they love somebody at 20, I think there's a chance. I just don't think a quarterback that they love gets to 20, besides like maybe Hendon Hooker. But Hendon Hooker's upside is Geno Smith, so I don't see the point.
Yep, 100%. But also, this Hendon Hooker talk today has me thinking this draft could get a little wild. The report came out today that multiple teams have him as QB3 on their board.
He's safe.
He's something. He can run a one-read offense. I know that, but I don't know much else. So,
and he's coachable.
He is. Yeah, he's also got a torn ACL and he's 25 years old. But let's get into our mock drafts. I know, you're right. But also, someone asked me today on the Hendon Hooker front. This is super off topic. We're not drafting Hendon Hooker, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Someone asked me, they're like, if you get 7 years out of really great play from Hendon Hooker, are you happy if that's like his career? Not really. If I'm drafting a quarterback, I want like at least 10 and I'm looking for 15. Like, I want to be set. I don't think Hendon Hooker leaves you set.
I think he can give you 10.
Yeah, I mean, but you're starting to get up. Like, I know we're kind of spoiled by the Bradys and Rodgers and, Favre even back in the day, but like most quarterbacks don't make it that long, man. I feel like.
Yeah.
I feel like they also just they get figured out before that. Unless you're an all-time great, like you're not able to sustain that long. So
I also like even if Hendon Hooker hits his ceiling, he's not costing that much. Like in terms of the tiers, and at 25, if you do pick him in the first round, take the 5th-year option, he's working out his contract at 30. He doesn't have a ton of bargaining power. He's getting like the Geno Jimmy G contract this year for about like the equivalent of what 75 will be in 5 years. So it's a cheaper option at above average possible play.
Sure. I
for anywhere from 5 to 10 years. I can't see it pushing past 10, but he's been in a pretty cushy scheme. So he's been a little protected, even if he sometimes made it so he wasn't protected. Which is, part of the reason he's hurt. So we'll see.
Yeah. We've got time for Hendon Hooker takes. Let's go back and forth. Neither of us made any trades. I think that's probably unrealistic. I think that they move around a little bit. But
they're a trade back team.
For sure.
They always are. I think the issue is where.
Yeah.
Because in theory, 20 makes the most sense. But if they're going for a receiver, which, spoiler, we both did, you kind of have to pick them at 20 to get your pick of the litter of sorts. So
yeah, it could also be one of those situations like Detroit last year where they had 2 firsts. They moved up with that second pick. They packaged some of their other picks. They also have 10 picks. I don't think they want to keep 10 picks. I think they probably want to.
I was going to say, yeah, they have a relatively full roster, even if I don't think all of them should be on said roster. It is a relatively full one. So I don't think they're making 10 picks either, but I didn't want to just willy-nilly package up picks to move up. Yeah. Felt disingenuous.
It's a what we would do mock. It's also like we need to be somewhat realistic. I also could see a world in which they come back up into the top 10 and package like 52 and 20 to do it. It might take a little more than that.
Probably 37 too.
It could take that, but for example, say, well, that's if they don't go receiver. Let's get into our mock draft. I almost
Yeah.
spoiled both of ours. So you go first, Randy. Who'd you take at 5?
So I went with possibly the best player in the class, Will Anderson Jr., the edge from Alabama at 5. Um, this is working under the assumption that either A, uh, 4 quarterbacks go in front with a trade up from the Cardinals, or B, another really likely scenario, the Cardinals take a bad draft pick and take Tyree Wilson instead, or
Yep.
Lucas Van Ness, or a corner. I don't understand. They're going to fuck it up somehow. Will Anderson should be the pick, and if he falls to them at 5, I think he is the pick. They have taken some so for the Jalen Carter discussion here at 5, they have taken some risky players in the past. This last year's draft, there's not a risky player on it. They really stuck to the character in this last class. I think they continue that at least for the first day or two without taking shots like that, and that's why I'm not taking Jalen Carter, even though I do think he is arguably the best player in the class as well, on field at least. But Will Anderson gives you the best of both worlds, and you only hear good things about him. So I think he could become a leader for you and be your best edge rusher and give you double-digit sacks year one, in my opinion, which will only help Darrell Taylor and Boye Mafe be better edge rushers.
Yeah, and Uchenna Nwosu too. I mean,
Yeah, they don't have any studs right now, and this gives you your one.
yeah, and he's a perfect scheme fit. Like you
Yes.
can't get a better scheme fit than that. I almost went in that direction. I think this is a realistic scenario. I also think maybe they bump up to 3 and they go get Will Anderson, and the Cardinals come back that way. Simply because
Same division.
true. We've seen it. You know, the
I
Vikings
know.
sent Hawkinson or got Hawkinson from the Lions.
It did.
Um,
That's not. It just seems weird for the Cardinals to be like, Kyler will be back middle of the year next year. You know what we'll do? We'll give the Seahawks Will Anderson.
yeah,
It just
that's probably fair. That's probably fair. But I almost went. I have the same reasoning for not taking Jalen Carter. I think you're right in that they were bad drafters. They took risky players and they didn't really hit. They had a couple good draft classes that kind of allowed them to compete. But you look at last year's draft class and you say, well, I kind of want to do that again. That's what I would like to do because last year's draft class for them is full of just smash 100%, the right pick almost every selection. So instead, I went under the assumption that the Cardinals don't mess up and they take Will Anderson at 3. And I went with Christian Gonzalez, the corner from Oregon. I do think that while that's not their biggest need, I do think pairing Tariq Woolen and Christian Gonzalez together to make up the most athletic corner room in the NFL would be a smart move, especially with how the NFL has trended. I think you just lock down both outside corner spots and then you can rotate guys into the slot. What's that?
I think it's a good fit. I want to state that plain and simple. But I think Mike Jackson's their best corner. And he's a corner too.
Right.
He's your workhorse corner. You know, he's not your one, but he's beloved there. So to me, I think it moves Tariq into the rotational spot. You know, for the future, I don't think that. But for this year, I think Gonzalez beats him out.
Yeah, but Tariq's ball production last year was too much to put him to the
Very
bench.
true.
Like
Maybe they go. Do they go more to a dime
I
or
mean,
nickel?
They
You have
very
your
well
two
could.
linebackers now. You could focus that. I don't know. I'm thinking aloud. Sorry.
You're good.
I really like what Mike Jackson did with them. I think he really amplified Tariq Woolen last year. Obviously, no question, Christian Gonzalez would be the best corner in that room.
Yeah. And so we now know what their profile is, what they're looking for in their corner, and he fits that almost to a
Yeah.
T. And honestly, like I said, they are in a position to take luxury picks. I don't know that Tyree Wilson is a good fit for them. And if they don't go Jalen Carter, that's like your point of maybe they do trade back from 5 here. Someone comes up and gets the 4th quarterback and only 3 go in the top 4. And then that's how maybe they work their way into a Christian Gonzalez, into a Lucas Van Ness down the board a little bit. That makes a little more sense, but he's not even really a good fit either. So,
It's basically taking what is viewed as a better version of Boye Mafe with either
right.
one of them, and
Yeah.
I really do think they need a speed rusher, and that's why it's a little bit awkward.
Nolan Smith, 5th overall. I thought about it.
It's tough. Fifth is out of the question for Nolan. I think once Wilson's off the board, then I think he's in contention with Lucas Van Ness for me,
Yeah.
just because it's of what you need there a little bit. Same with Miles Murphy. But yeah, I think Gonzalez is a good. I am happy you did him instead of Wilson, and then we got to actually discuss why.
Right.
Because it
Yeah.
feels like everyone's like, well, Anderson's off the board, it's Wilson. I think that's giving them more leniency to take Carter than Wilson.
Yeah. And
So
honestly, like we said, they've taken players with character questions in the past. And if they check all the boxes on Jalen Carter and they are comfortable with it, that's the pick. And that's the best pick if they think they can get the most out of him. So,
yeah, 100%. And obviously, we'll see how it goes with Jalen Carter. It sounds like his agent, who's the powerhouse agent, uh,
yeah.
is guaranteeing he's top 10. And I do think that's probably going to happen still. I just don't. I'm not sure it's here, and I'm not sure it's 6 either. We know it's not 7. It's a
I,
tough spot.
I'm starting to think it's 9. I saw a little report on the Bears doing
I could see
extra work on him. So,
I could see 8 for sure. Keep him around for the community service. So we'll move on to 20.
yeah,
Uh,
you go.
so I actually went with Jordan Addison, the wide receiver from USC here, to be a little bit of a Tyler Lockett replacement, as well as
I
just
like it.
your slot for the future. Right here. I don't think Lockett is replaced in the next 2 years. Personally, I think he sticks with his team for another 2 years. And this gives you a slot for the future. I did work under the assumption that JSN was not on the board, though. Plain and simple. I want that pointed out.
Yeah, that is a good segue into my 20th overall pick because I took JSN here. I Jackson Smith and Jigba had a fantastic pre-draft process. I want to throw that out there. I also think that we could be watching a different mindset when it comes to receivers when we get to this draft because I do think that these guys are going to be available a little later than we've seen in the last few drafts. I think there's a chance Zay Flowers is the first one off the board to the Patriots because it sounds like they're obsessed with him. And then after that, it might start a run. It also that could, the Texans can take Jackson at 12 potentially. There are a few different landing spots for Jackson ahead of this, but I think that there's a chance he lands here at 20, and if he's there at 20, I don't think you can make a better pick. I think you slide Lockett to the outside for a little bit. I think Jackson can play outside though. We haven't talked a
Yeah,
whole
no.
lot about
He
Jackson, but
he's legitimately the Lockett replacement.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Because Lockett is an inside outside guy, JSN is as well. He is the pick at 20. Like he's
Yeah.
better than Jordan Addison. Like I'm not
Yes.
gonna argue there. I feel like this is definitely the range of possibilities for JSN, but because to me he's clear and ahead the one for this class right now. I think he's picked before, and I don't necessarily think it's by someone sticking in their spots.
That's fair.
I think someone trades up ahead of Seattle.
I think that's a really fair thing that I've been messing around with in my mock drafts too. So,
But it very well could be the Texans trading back for one of these teams, like the Steelers trying to come up for a tackle. Then they pick him at 17. But that's I fully went with he's not on the board, because if he's on the board, he's by far and away the best pick for them at 20.
yeah. All right, hit us with your pick 37 because we have the same exact thing except opposite here.
Yes, and only gonna get worse.
Yep.
So I went with John Michael Schmitz, interior offensive lineman from Minnesota. He's a center, but he can also play guard. Um, I think he'd be their starting center day one. I know they signed Evan Brown to be their starting center, but he is also a journeyman that's played guard and center. And I think this, as well as Phil Haynes, will give them your best two at left guard or right guard and center. And then you have Damian Lewis, and then obviously your tackle duo from last year. I think that's a very, very good young core that's good at running the football, plain and simple. I think John Michael Schmitz could go to the Giants. I think he can go to one or two other places before this kind of pick. But if he is somehow on the board at 37, which I think is definitely in the range of possibilities, I don't think he's outside the top 40. But if he's here at 37, he's a smash pick again for these guys. There's other centers. You're going to talk about one. But like Luke Weipler and Tittman, I think, can go here. I think for both of those guys, it's a little early. Just because I think they're just a little bit lower on the board. I think you wait to your other second round pick for those guys.
I have a theory about Tittman though, and that's the NFL is going to love a big, massive center that can move
From Wisconsin.
From Wisconsin, but also that's what John Michael Schmitz is, and I think he does it better.
Yes.
So
he's an absolute monster. They would be guaranteeing basically 90 plus yards on the ground every game with him at center.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I went Steve Avila. Another potential center, can also play guard. One of those guys that does have that flexibility from TCU. Really good athlete, tested well. I think there are times he has some slow feet. I think there are times that in pass protection he's not the best. I also think that he can get out in space and move, and that's exactly what the Seahawks are looking for in their offensive linemen. We saw that with how they drafted last year. And ultimately, they do need to address that part. If they leave the top 50 without if they leave the top 52 without addressing the center or a guard position, I'll think a little differently of how they come out of this draft. So Avila,
100% agree. This is a center class. So there's a lot of teams that are coming in hoping to get centers of the future that might not be day one starters, but this is a team that needs a starting guard or center for day one. So I need to stop saying that. And I think Avila comes in as your guard day one. Just because I think for this team and how it's set up, I would rather Brown at center, and then Avila maybe takes over center in a year. But it would work out really, really well.
Yeah. All right. We have the same pick here, so you can talk about Keanu Benton. Go ahead.
Yeah, Keanu Benton, D-line from Wisconsin, so I went with Minnesota guard / center, so I had to go for the Wisconsin D-lineman to make up for it. This is giving you a possible nose tackle, especially day one, with your starting nose tackle still banged up, and Brian Moan. So he's really just a big dude that gives you a lot of raw power, 6'4", 315. I think he's slightly slimmed down for the combine, I want to say, but it was only like 5 pounds.
He was 309 at the combine.
Okay. But good arm length, good everything, really good in the run stuffing. It has some pretty good hand counters, I would say. But his pass rush still leaves a lot to be desired, and some versatility leaves a lot to be desired. But coming in day one to be a nose tackle and give you rotational snaps no matter what there will definitely improve this defense in a massive way. Yeah. Because really, Draymond Jones and Jaron Reed, I don't love in those positions.
That's fair. The only thing I wanted to add on Benton is very strong player. Holds his ground really well, and that's something that the Seahawks defense was missing last year. They got bullied a little bit, so
Yeah, and didn't allow their linebackers proper time to read and chip and react. And I think bringing in Benton, as well as your already additions to your defensive line, will make an enormous improvement in their run defense this year.
yeah. All right, go ahead with your pick 83.
Okay, we did have a different one here, thankfully. I went with Darius Rush, the corner from South Carolina. Really good length, good ball skills, good zone coverage. A great athlete again. So this is me getting another lengthy corner, 6'2", 200. I believe he ran 4.3640 at the combine. This is
Yeah,
the type of corner they want. So this is definitely a dumbed down version of what Christian got and Christian Gonzalez. But I do think he serves as a more rotational and heir apparent to Mike Jackson. So this is, for me, a better way to just get depth at the position and get better for the future without having to use your top pick, because I think they desperately need a top edge rusher, and that's kind of how I had to go. And if you're either taking two shots at receiver in this class on day 2 to 3, or you're taking one for sure on day 1, in my opinion, for this team. So I think we both went that way, but
yeah,
I think Darius Rush gives you really good versatility. I think he's easily an outside corner. I don't think there's any question there. And he'll give you impact on special teams with that speed, but there's areas to develop for him, and he can continue to rotate, and it gives you just another good young piece for that outside.
yeah. I like it. I went with Noah Sewell, the linebacker from Oregon. Had a pretty rough year. He came in, talked about it as like a first round pick. I didn't see it in my summer scouting, so I kind of understand this fall. I don't think he was ever really that caliber, but I think he's still a good player. He's a smart player. He's got really good instincts. He reacts well. I think, size wise, shedding wise, I'm not in love with his profile. I also think that, they do need to get younger at linebacker. They have Jordan Brooks. They signed Devin Bush. They have Bobby Wagner for a year. And then after that, they don't have much. And they tend to play more linebackers. I think, too, we talked about potentially going dime with that Christian Gonzalez pick. I don't think they're going to be able to. I just think that NFL, we're on that point where we're going to be constructing defenses a little differently because the run attack is going to be more prominent. It's a cycle. And so going out and getting a guy that I think can develop, I think Noah Sewell is a developmental piece for them. And ultimately, he rotates in immediately as, if Bobby Wagner has to go down, Devin Bush goes down, he's on the field. And I think he has that ability. I just think, 3 years from now, we could be saying, wow, what a good day 2 pick from this kid that was talked about pretty highly.
Yeah, and we know Jordan Brooks is viewed as their linebacker, one of the two of the future, but they technically don't have that other one on the roster right now. I think we both know it's not Devin Bush unless he can get a bit of a career resurgence. We know it's not Bobby Wagner simply because of age, but he'll definitely bring the leadership that this room needs.
Yeah.
And there was clear, good working relationship with Jordan Brooks before. I think that'll help his development again, bring him back in the room. But for for him to be in the same room as Bobby Wagner, I think this will be the best kind of spot for him, where he's not tasked with taking on a starting role day 1.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, I think he tested well. His relative athletic score was above 8. So another guy that I think they'll like. So,
Well, speaking of good athletic score, I went with another DB in the
yep.
4th round to pick 123, which I believe he was like this. He's top 5 in corners for RAS this year, and Jacorian Bennett, the corner from Maryland, 5'11", 190, good length, 4.340.
Yeah.
They've plain and simple shown us what they want to do with this room, and it's speed. And I think it's the right thing. It's a smart thing. I think he gives you the same kind of thing in a smaller version, what you got with Tyreek Wooden last year in the same kind of pick. I think
Yeah.
this is what they were looking at last year. And the best thing with Jacory Bennett is while I don't think he does, any of the positions, to a top level, because he's pretty grabby, and he does have some tightness, but he's a very, very smart player with willing ability to tackle, which lets him be a corner on the outside, be a nickel corner, and be a rotational safety inside and outside the box. I think he's a good scheme fit for these guys. He could be a move piece and basically just fill in where needed, because the cornerback room was relatively healthy last year, but the safety room was definitely not. They definitely need more pieces, and I think he fits. And again, another special teams darling for this team.
Yeah, I like it. He's not quite top 5. He is
So close.
he's top 12. But
Solid, probably.
9.58 relative athletic score.
Yeah, I knew he was above 9.5, and I was like, well, that's the one. And
Yeah.
really, once you get past, you're taking shots at safeties in this round, and I'm not, in love with them necessarily. Yeah. I'd rather get a versatile move piece.
Yeah, for sure. Here at 123, I took Zach Evans, the running back from Ole Miss.
Everyone was shocked in the comments.
Yep. I am gonna take Zach Evans to every team as long as he falls here into the 4th round. I think him falling into the 4th round makes a lot of sense at this point, just with how his pre-draft process has gone. I think, in terms of what they're looking for in their running back, though, Zach Evans has it. He's a perfect complement to Ken Walker. I think they both have that crazy athleticism that allows them to be successful in a running scheme like this. And I don't think they go into the year. I know I signed Jerick McKinnon. That's a completely different role. I don't think they go into a year with DJ Dallas being the guy if Ken Walker goes down with injury. I think they are going to add a running back at some point. I know you do too later. But I think Zach Evans is one of those guys that they'll look at and say, well, can this guy eat up carries for us if we need him to, based on our history with Rashad Penny and Chris Carson? Yes, let's take him. So while I have drafted him to literally every single team that we've done here, I'm doing it again, and it's our show, so I don't care.
Yeah, he'll never be the RB1 for this team, but that might be his case. Yeah. It's a good scheme fit, personally, I think. And again, DJ Dallas is basically someone that should be cut from the roster, if we're going to be honest.
Yeah.
He's shown glimpses at different times, but he's never stayed healthy. When he's been given a load, he's been basically a plotter at best. So, getting in someone that's actually talented, I think is a good move.
I almost doubled up at running back, but instead I chose to sign Jerick McKinnon, and that's how I filled out the room.
I do think the way my draft shakes out, I think they do sign some kind of bruising back as a depth piece and possibly just cut DJ Dallas because he's really done nothing.
Yeah, for sure. All right, quickly, just run through your last 4 picks quickly. We're running along a little bit.
Yep. All right. I went D winners at 151. Sorry. I'm not drinking 151, so I shouldn't be messing up my words as much. But good range as a linebacker, good short area quickness, showed good leadership abilities to really lead this TCU defense. Just needs to get much better in the run game. I think this linebacking room can help him do that. 154, Jackson Kirkland, the guy I've talked about before, guy that started at both tackles. Shows really good, smart experience at the position. I think he can. I think he's about 6'6" and 305 around there. So he's probably going to be more of a tackle build that's going to be playing guard because he needs to get to that NFL speed at the position to really play tackle. So I do think he comes in as your rotational backup guard, which is what they need. They need depth at the position as well as a possible swing tackle. And I think he fills both roles as kind of your versatile piece of the offensive line, which you desperately need. 6th round, 198, Jose Ramirez. Eastern Michigan. I'm drafting all the Eastern Michigan boys. But great first step quickness. Really good numbers posted. 6'2", 240. Yet another speed rusher. 4'7", 40. Really good short shuttle. Good bench press. I think he is definitely a developmental pass rusher, but a lot of production. But it's at Eastern Michigan, so he needs to get better at strength and being better in the run game. But he's stepping in to be a rotational piece here on a team that has a bunch of rotational pieces. So I think he has a chance to be one of the last ones standing in 2 years. But this is a guy that I'm going to bet on, and with the kind of production he put up, it's a trait, especially with what Max Crosby's done. It's one of those like, okay, he did it there with that coaching. Can this guy even be half of that in the 6th round? And that's what we're looking for here. 7th round, Travis Dye, running back from USC, Christian's favorite running back in the class, I feel like.
Close.
So I know.
I like
Clearly, clearly approved by him. He is an older rookie, so I'm surprised Christian hasn't put him out to pasture, being 24 years old,
yeah.
with a good amount of carries at USC. But he was an absolute weapon for this offense this last year. New look offense, new look quarterback, super productive player, great instincts, good in the passing game. It, really has a 3-down skill set, but will never really use that at the next level. But I think he really puts a good fresh coat of paint on the receiving back of this room. You replace Travis Homer with Travis Dye, and you can now pair him with maybe an older back as well with Kenneth Walker for this year and the future. But I do think he is one of those stick around pieces for this team.
Yeah. I like how you finished up your draft. I'll run through mine as well. I started 151, DJ Johnson, the edge rusher out of Oregon. Probably the least bendy player I've watched in a while, but also has sub 4.5 speed, and has some traits that, he's an older guy as well, but I do think that he could develop into one of those like outside linebacking, edge rusher type of players that the Seahawks are looking for. And so, well, I think they still need depth in that area. I waited on edge. You got Will Anderson early, and I did not. And so this kind of it rotates in. He's probably not a guy that you're looking to contribute immediately, but still what I think can be a good player. 154, I went with Colby Wooden, the defensive tackle out of Auburn. Pretty good athlete, just a high motor guy. I'm not entirely certain if he's going to be more of an interior defensive tackle or if he could rotate in with Draymond Jones, which I think would be his ideal role. You agree with that?
Yeah, I think he probably comes in as more of a rotational one. And then his best development from what I've seen from him on tape would be becoming more of a pure 3 with some 5 tech upside.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of I've seen people floating around like, what is his relative athletic score if he's a defensive end? Because I think I'd want to play him there. I get that for sure. So I went with him here at 154. I actually think that's a perfect fit right behind Draymond Jones. But I doubled up at defensive tackle here. At 198, so I doubled up at wide receiver too. I went with Jason Brownlee, the wide receiver from Southern Mississippi. This is a guy that he's older. He was at, I believe, the East West Shrine Bowl this year. 6'2", 198, ran a sub 4.6, which is pretty good. This is a jump ball receiver that I think would be interesting on the outside here. Maybe he rotates in for DK Metcalf. Maybe he's DK's primary backup, and that's fine in the 6th round. But also a guy that I think has the willingness to go play special teams, and that's kind of like a guy you toss on kick coverage teams and things like that. So you hope he develops into something more than that. I don't know if he does ever, but that's okay.
They really don't have a jump ball receiver on this team besides DK. So I
Right.
think it makes sense. And yeah, obviously special teams. I think obviously, just anytime we get into the 5th plus, you want guys that have a chance to be something for you that can also participate on special teams. And
Yeah.
I think he definitely fits that mold.
Yeah, for sure. And then my last pick, I went with Nick Hampton, the edge rusher out of App State. I say edge rusher he's also one of those guys that fits the scheme a little bit. So, I think he's a standing edge rusher. He's a fantastic athlete, one of the better ones in this class, actually. His relative athletic score 9.82, ran a sub 4.6 at 239 pounds, and good arm length. I think this is a guy that can develop into an actual rotational player. I don't actually think he's going to be here in the 7th round. I just don't think that mock draft simulators have quite caught up to what his value will actually be. But I cheated a little bit on that one. So
Yeah, I also want to point that out. In the 6th round and 7th round, I was really tempted to pick Evan Hull. I think he goes in the 5th, so I just didn't do it.
yeah, 5th makes sense for him.
4th or 5th, his testing's
Yeah.
been great, and his off season's been great.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and like you said, I went with the one edge rusher, and that's what they really need in this team. Other than that, if you're not getting that in this draft, you want depth, and depth at the speed and depth interiorly. So you attacked it the other way, and I think that's an appropriate way for sure because they already have depth as well, but the depth really hasn't worked out. So you might as well continually take swings at that if you're not taking that top dog.
Yeah. All right. Hit us with your new team.
All right. Gino, Kenneth Walker with Travis Dye. Screw DJ Dallas. DK Metcalf and Chosen Anderson. On the left side, Tyler Lockett, and I don't care about us. Cody Thompson on the right side. Jordan Addison and D. Eskridge in the slot. Charles Cross, Damian Lewis, John Michael Schmitz, Phil Haynes, and Abraham Lucas on the line. Noah Fant Disley continuing that pairing. Draymond Jones, Keanu Benton, Jaron Reed, and Will Anderson are your predominant 4 guys as edge rushers, with Nwosu and Mafe and Darrell Taylor also being edge rushers.
Dude, Darrell Taylor is good. I know he wasn't productive last year, but like that and Nwosu had a crazy year. If they add an edge rusher to this team, the defense is insane. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no. If you add an actual number 1 edge rusher, and that's like, I feel like we're putting edge rushers there without like actually addressing what their team need is at the position. Like they need a 1, or like you did, take more shots at the bat, But I think that D line is ridiculous. And then having Watt, Armand Watt, to be precise, Monet, or however you pronounce that name, and Jose Ramirez. I've never actually heard his name pronounced. So it gives you good rotational pieces there. Jordan Brooks, Bobby Wagner, Devin Bush, and D. Winters at linebacker. I mean, solid athletic room with Bobby Wagner being your leader of that team again, with Jordan Brooks taking over that role last year. And then, I mean, a cornerback room of fucking pure athletes. Yeah. And Mike Jackson, Tariq Williams, Darius Rush, Ja'Cory Bennett, and honestly, Isaiah Dunn and Trey Brown aren't anything to sleep at either. Julian Love and Kobe Bryant as well as a nickel. And Kobe can play on the outside. I know he didn't like it all last year. I do think he can rotate on the outside. Quandre Diggs, Jamal Adams, and Ryan Neal at your safety positions, with Ja'Cory Bennett and Julian Love taking snaps there when needed. I mean, that's an improvement in areas that you need. I still don't think you have the quarterback to win a Super Bowl, but I think you have the blueprints.
This team, when we look at this team after the draft, because when I'm about to go through mine, I think my build is also like, holy shit, look at this team. I just don't see how we're not talking about the Seahawks as a favorite in the NFC after this draft.
Well, and that's the other thing. They're going to get 4 wins in division without trying, because the Cardinals are going to be poopy, and the Rams are going to be bad.
Really bad.
I'm hoping Stafford's good to go. I'm hoping Donald's playing. Hoping Cup's good to go. I just don't trust the team, and that line for them is terrible. And if you put this D-line against them, and in the 49ers D-line, fuck. But you're in a bloodbath with the 49ers, no matter who's at quarterback, and it's going to be a dogfight for that division.
Yeah. All right. I'll run through my team. Geno Smith, Ken Walker, Zach Evans, Jerick McKinnon, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith, and Jigba as your primary 3 receivers. Just absurd.
Crazy.
Charles Cross, Damian Lewis, Evan Brown, Steve Avila, Abraham Lucas as your starting offensive lineman. Noah Fant, Disley at tight end. I don't think they'll touch tight end, personally.
No, because
I
they
think they
like
like
Colby
Colby
Parkinson as
Parkinson.
well.
Yeah.
They-
Yeah.
if there's someone they love in round 4, 5, and 6, maybe. Like
Yeah.
maybe they fall in love with like Bretton Strange.
Yeah.
But
Which
it's possible. And that would be, but they love Colby, man.
I know. And rightfully, I mean, Colby's been good when he's on the
Yeah,
field.
same with Disley.
Yep. Draymond Jones, Keanu Benton, Jaron Reed, Colby Wooden rotating in with those guys. And then your outside linebackers, edge rushers, Daryl Taylor, Uchenna Nwosu, Boye Mafe, Nick Hampton, DJ Johnson rotating in there. But they've got some other guys. Tyreek Smith, I think, is a guy that can rotate in as well. So I don't feel super bad about that. I do wish I could have gotten a good scheme fit earlier. But it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'm good with that build. And then Jordan Brooks, Bobby Wagner, Noah Sewell, Devin Bush is your primary 4 inside linebackers, which is a solid group. And then corners, Christian Gonzalez, Mike Jackson, Tariq Woolen, Trey Brown, like you said, Julian Love. But I'm also going into this with I think they're going to have injuries in the safety room. And so I think Julian Love kicks back out to safety. Kobe Bryant slides into nickel. And then Quandre Diggs or Jamal Adams is there with Julian Love. But you've got flexibility now to do all of those things, which should be a primary goal for the Seahawks this offseason.
Yeah. For what it's worth, Ryan Neal played a lot of big money snaps for them last year in replacement of Jamal Adams. He is a restricted free agent. No one's really offered him or given him interest. I think he returns no matter what.
Yeah.
But he could step up. He was very, very good last year.
Yeah. Yeah, and the way I attack this, like that secondary is going to be really, really tough to beat. So you can go later on the pass rush. On the other side of things, like you went the other route, and I think that that's a viable option as well. So.
Yeah, it's. Yeah, literally, you went early on corner, I went early on edge, and we flipped it.
Yep.
And it's just, this city, they love Mike Jackson.
I know.
Like it was so tough because I also played with Christian Gonzalez and I was like, yeah, it makes so much sense, but man,
I know.
I think they love it and hate it at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. All right, that'll do it for this Friday fix of the Seattle Seahawks. Let us know what you think, Seahawks fans. I know we didn't do things that you're used to seeing. I see a lot of mock drafts, and this is not really what I typically see. So let us know what you think. Randy, do you have anything to add before we get out of here?
Not for this one. You got you got places to be in the morning.
Yes, this is true. That sounds good. We will be back hopefully early next week. We're going to work on another show this weekend. So we'll get something out hopefully very soon. Thank you guys again for sticking with us. I know we've been hit or miss with getting episodes out and whatnot, but we appreciate all of you guys watching, listening, things like that. Yeah, I think that's it. For Randy Hall, I'm Christian Williams. We'll talk to you guys next time. Later.